this. Oh, and I didn't change the background. Dang it. Dang it. That's all right. It's okay. It's all going to be fine. I'll do that while we talk. It'll be fine. Just running 100 miles an hour today, and I totally forgot to do that piece. It's okay. We're talking the same thing again this week. No, we're not. We're totally not. Hey, dude. How you doing?
Hey, man. How you doing? It's Friday night on a Thursday.
Yes, it so is. It needs to be. It really needs to be. I'm actually taking a chance tonight because it's stuffy as heck in my shed because it's been so warm today. But it's actually pretty cool outside, so I got the doors open. But we're going to see if I get visited by child or dog at some point. That'll be fun.
It's funny. I actually have you're on double mute where you like mute yourself in a meeting and then you mute the device that you're on, and that's why you're on double mute. I have the double mute equivalent of a lock on my door because I am 100% going to end up like that guy on CNN where the kid comes walking in, right now there is work that's being done by my two sons, who are twins and 4 years old, and all prisoners, they're all trying to figure out how to get into things, get out of things. And so I have a lock on that door, but I also have that the thing that you put on the baby guard on a doorknob.
Yes.
And what's really funny is they figured out they're like the raptors in Jurassic Park. They've been testing the weaknesses, and they figured out how one could kind of stand on the other, and then they could get the thing off of the doorknob. It's like living with a bunch of little tiny safe crackers. All they have is time, and I'm eventually, I'm ready for my doom at their hands. I anticipate, eventually seeing. Finding one of them in the distance, making eye contact, and then having the other one hit me from the side.
It makes me think of, when you're saying this, do your kids watch Peppa Pig, or have they watched Peppa Pig ever? It makes me think of the twin. Not Peppa Pig, I'm sorry. No, there's this other show, animated show, by the same voice actors who do Peppa Pig, called Ben and Holly's Little Kingdom. It's like they're all elves and dwarves and fairies and magic, but it's literally the exact same voice actors from Peppa Pig. And there's the fairies, the king and queen fairy, have these twin daughters, something in Daisy, I forget their names, and they are exactly what you're describing. They're like, Wandy, where'd your teacher go? Down. They blew her up and sent her away in this cartoon. You're like, wait, what? Their child teacher's just gone. That sounds about right.
I'm telling you, that is a Jedi Twins show that I would watch. Because it's that's the Force powers right there. Having twins is for those people who might not know, I have a really big family. We have 5 kids, and we have 5. There's an old joke on this. We have 5 because we did not want to have 6.
Nailed it, buddy. Nailed it, buddy.
Yeah, see, that's an old joke. Not from the best, but still a good one. The fun thing about it is that we have the 5 kids. We have our 3 daughters. We went for one more, and we ended up with twins at the end. And I was in the minor leagues of parenting until I graduated to the majors of having twins. It's I don't envy I don't know how the people do it who it's their first, out of the gate they have some type of twins. Or we actually work with a gentleman on our team who has triplets. Had triplets at the start. And Anakin Padme, seriously, how was that gonna work? The first time it's twins. It doesn't seem like they have good medical. I mean, I've never had a doctor come up to me and say, there's nothing we can do, Ryan. I mean, it seems like you've lost the will to live. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Now that we're thinking about this again, now I can see a crossover between that episode of what was it, Dr. Ball, that episode, and Monty Python's one of their things, like the bring out your dead. Like, I'm still awake. Yeah. I'm still here. Like, nope, she's dead. Lost the will to live. No. I think I'll go for a walk. Nope, totally dead. She lost the will. She's done. Oh my gosh.
Good times.
Good times.
Good times. Yeah.
Good times. Yeah. Oh man.
So the title above my head is like super provocative.
I wrote like 6 different versions of this title. Some were longer, shorter, and then I finally got there and I'm like, oh, why'd you kill Han and Luke? And I'm like, it's got to be something that people look at and go, wait, what? That was my hope.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, you came up with this title, so I feel like you should lead us into the topic of the evening.
So I will happily do that. You're the one who kind of dropped the article for the two of us to read that I hadn't even seen. So a quick spoiler alert, and it's the wrong background. I apologize, everybody. I'll do this real quick. Ignore the thing above Ryan. Ignore that. But subscribe. Please. Hit the buttons and the subscribes and the notifications and all the other things that you do. We love it. Okay, so the topic tonight is this article that you sent me from, and I think I still have it queued up here. This article was from IndieWire, but I'm sure it came out in other places too.
It's all over the place. Over the place.
And effectively, it's an article interviewing Marcia Lucas. I think George Lucas's ex-wife, his last marriage before his current marriage, right? I believe
that's correct.
And she has some not so nice things to say about. It's interesting because she does the sort of thing where you're like, yeah, you're really cool, but that crap you did is really terrible. Like, whatever that's called, she did it. She's like, I really like Kathy, like Kathleen Kennedy. She's like, I really like Kathy, like referring to this time when like George knew her when she was doing something else at Disney or someplace else, and Marcia knew this and all these things. And then she's like, so now that I've said that, I'm going to take a big steaming on the content you have created for the last 10 years. Like,
that's right.
And it's interesting, and people I'll drop a link to this in the chat so you can see it if you haven't seen this yet. It's fascinating though, and I want to dig into like all of the stuff she said. There's so much content in here but the choice to kill off Han and Luke, which is where I got the title. I ended up settling on the title, was that one. This one thing that's listed there, and her quote is, she had a quote someplace in here about they don't get it, and J.J. Abrams,
they don't get it.
This is like fodder for you for sure. No, this part's fodder for you for sure. That's why I was pausing for a second, because they don't get it, and J.J. Abrams is writing these stories. When I saw that movie where they killed Han Solo, I was furious. I was furious when they killed Han Solo. Absolutely, positively, there was no rhyme or reason to it, and I love this because what it made me think is, first, I'm pretty sure that if nothing else happened, I'm pretty sure that I've read someplace in conversations that when they asked Harrison Ford to come back, he's like, yeah, but I'm doing one movie. Like, I'm not doing a trilogy. So you figure that out, but you got me for one. I'm sure, well, actually it probably was pretty snarky because he tends to be a pretty salty dude, which is fine. But I'm sure there was other reasons why they wrote it the way they did. But I thought that was pretty telling that, I think we've talked about this before, and like for me at least, like you didn't even need to bring Han back. Like I don't feel like that was even a necessary thing. We've talked about this before with like the Duel of the Fates and Kylo Ren or Ben Solo being the bad guy. He could have just been Kylo Ren. He didn't have to be Ben Solo. He could have been Kylo Ren, explore the Knights of Ren. Don't talk about the Knights of Ren at all. There's like one random comics run that talks about the Knights of Ren and someone named Ren, which I haven't even finished reading about, for like a hot minute, and that's it. So I empathize a lot with her stance on this, because I know we've talked about these things in part, but it really gets me thinking, like, what were you really thinking here? Because it feels like when I see a comment like this or comments like hers, it makes me feel more and more like I didn't want to believe this about The Force Awakens, because I'm like, I see the similarities with A New Hope, of course, but to me it feels like a good reset to people who haven't experienced this. But when I read this, more and more it feels like, what do we write? I don't know. Oh, there was this, don't worry about it. There was this movie once, and it kind of played out like this. What's that? Oh, don't worry about it. It's just the same movie that we made 35, 40 years ago. But no worries, let's just do that again. It's like, crap. Dang it. I didn't want to have to accept that, but this kind of feels like that's what happened.
Yeah, Marcia Lucas, man, she was like taking no prisoners in this. I mean, what's what do the kids say? Got no F's to give.
What is it?
Like,
If I walk
yeah,
outside and I hold my hand out, an F might fall from the sky, and I can give it to you.
yeah. I mean, like, seriously, I was like, man, what? I mean, she's still somewhat in the industry. She's active, and by the way, like, I just want to throw out here as like bona fides to like Marcia Lucas. Marcia Lucas is the only Oscar winner in the Lucas family, between her and her ex-husband George. He was nominated and has been nominated several times. She and he even got an honorary award. I think it's the Thalberg Award. I could be wrong on that, but Marcia Lucas won an Oscar for the original Star Wars. She won an
Really?
Oscar for editing. Yeah, she's a very competent editor. In fact, one of my favorite parts of Star Wars is the thing that she edited. I mean, she's a great editor overall. Star Wars moves at a clip pace. There is not a wasted scene in the original theatrical release of Star Wars. It is a think about how fast that movie goes, and it's very different than all of the other Star Wars movies, which feel like they could take place over days, if not weeks. Star Wars feels like it's happening in maybe a matter of 2 days. It only has one full out and dissolve, and that's when they're on the planet of Yavin, and they fade into the jungle to fade out of the jungle, and it's to show you the passage of time. But otherwise, the movie does not slow down. It's like boom, 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 boom. It's well edited. She rightly deserved an Academy Award with her two co-editors. She famously, they had only the Tusken Raider who hits Luke lifts up his gaffy stick right in the shot. Now, a careful viewer will notice that she's the one that created an editing trick, which is they had only just he hits Luke. Yeah, it's the up and down, up and down, up and down, and that's because it is rewound and replayed, rewound and replayed, and it's a really smart editing trick that she did. And so she's a really like smart person. She's got some really funny turns of phrases. I think she said that when she knew Kathleen, she was full of beans, and I think that's a compliment.
Okay.
I'm on the West Coast, so maybe that's like an East Coast compliment. I don't know.
No
And
idea.
but the thing that was legit is um she comes from an era that she's like of that group, that like 1970s group, that George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, John Milnes, Brian De Palma. These were people that made like some of the most fundamentally important movies that we watch today, whether it's things like Star Wars or Jaws, or I mean, pick your Spielberg movie, E.T., pick your Francis Ford Coppola movie, Godfathers 1 or 2, Apocalypse Now. I mean, so many like amazing movies from this crop of movies of people that she worked with. And in fact, many of those filmmakers' wives, they're filmmakers in and of themselves. Like, I don't think you call Marcia Lucas George Lucas's wife. She's a very good editor, just like Francis Ford Coppola made Apocalypse Now. His wife made a complimentary movie called Hearts of Darkness, and I gotta say, Hearts of Darkness kind of a better movie than Apocalypse Now, because it reviews how crazy it was to make Apocalypse Now. And of course, I'm blanking on her name, which I apologize for that, because she is a great artist in and of her own
It's
right.
not Sophia Coppola. Sophia Coppola is his daughter,
No,
right?
Sophia Coppola is his daughter, and I want to say his wife's name is like Edith or Eleanor. I think it's Eleanor. And again, like, it just escapes me at the moment, but she's an amazing filmmaker in and of her own right. And so there's all of this like background that you should know when you read this. Like, it just seems like she's just taking pot shots at like Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams, when in fact she's like an accomplished artist. And it just must have been the right day with the right person And I don't think she, some people thought, oh, she might be channeling George Lucas. No, these are her thoughts.
Oh yeah.
This is because she even throws Phantom Menace under the bus. I think she says something like, I went and saw Phantom Menace and then went to my car and cried. Which I feel you right there, because that's what I did. But the real thing that I thought is she was upset at the storytelling. And Jeff, you know this. Really great movies, sometimes they can have problematic development, and sometimes you save a movie in the storytelling and the direction, and sometimes you save it in the editing room. And in one of those two places, you can find a movie. You can shoot 200 hours of film and get to a 2-hour movie. You can find a movie in the editing. That happens. And great movies do both ways. Mm-hmm. They find the movie in production, and they find the movie in the editing room. One makes it sharper than the other. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring is a really good example of that, where they shot like hundreds of hours of film, and they found the movie there on production. They found the movie in the editing room, which was to make Frodo the protagonist, not a co-protagonist. The thing though that I'll throw out there is, she really tasks them. She takes them apart. Takes them apart on storytelling, takes them apart on their protagonist of choice, who's Rey, takes them apart on the kind of like, hey, this was a quick cash grab for you guys. And I love that there is one thing that I do think she's right on, which is you guys didn't understand the magic of what Star Wars was.
Yes.
You guys think you did, but you didn't. And I think looking back, outside of the hype that I felt seeing The Force Awakens, which was just like seeing a friend that I hadn't seen in a long time. Mm-hmm. It was like great. It was like a reunion. I think, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I think it's valid criticism. I'm not going to say all of it I agree with, because I also think I don't agree with some of the things she says about Rey. I think there was character development that could have been done there, but I think it's really valid criticism.
I totally agree. The couple thoughts that I have are talking about Rey for a second, but then I'll get back to an order of operations thing. I think that actually could have made this all a lot better. You and I have talked before about like Finn's what happened to Finn. Like they knocked him down in the second movie and like took his role out almost entirely, which bothered me because he was like given a lightsaber and he clearly has force powers and like cool. Well, we're not going to talk about that anymore. Like that was a thing that may have just happened. So that pissed me off for a lot of reasons. But having Rey as the main character, I liked a lot. There may have been issues with it, like with the storytelling and how they developed her or didn't develop her. But I actually really like that the person they give it to is, yes, she's a kind of the desert rat, sort of like Luke was, in a female version. Okay. But very different situation. She has, not only does she not have any family, she has nobody. She is completely by herself. And she sees, even in the beginning when she sees BB-8, like she's like, cool, go that way. Peace. Like, I don't know. You're not coming with me. Like, and she lets him come, but like she lets him come with her, or him. She lets them, BB-8, come with her. Out of like, you can, but you're not sticking with, like, she is not interested in like deviating from herself. And I like that a lot about her character. So when I see, I'll say attacks, when I see heavy criticism about that, it bothers me because yes, Finn would have been an amazing character to pick up and have like a dual storyline sort of thing, or like a side story that's happening while he's developing his force powers, and or even on screen make a conscious decision that I'm going to, like Leia, I'm going to put that aside because I've got some other stuff that I need to get done first sort of thing, and let her run off of this while he does something, but they still have a connection. But for me, where I think I'm with you, like The Force Awakens, I felt sort of the same way. I don't know if I could have described it the way you just did, but as you were saying that, it resonated. Like, yeah, that's actually very much how I was feeling. Like, oh God, it feels good to sort of have the heavy, the weighted blanket on of Star Wars again and be like, oh, yeah, all right, this is really cool. So I think for me, the thing that they could have done a lot differently and probably would have ended up producing better, not just producing in the term of a producer, but like literally creating better cinematic experiences, would have been wait on The Force Awakens. I know you wanted to do it so bad. Like,
Yep.
but maybe just hold off for a
Yep.
little bit. Like, make it, but then just kind of put it on pause for a bit, and then let the time pass that needed to pass to create Rogue One. Because I think when they hit Rogue One and they started telling that story, there was a stride that was created. It was gritty, it was
Yep.
dark, it was dingy, it was real.
Yep.
And I think if that had happened and they had let themselves go back to the editing and the and some of the other things for Force Awakens, they could have been like, hey, hold on. Look at the reception of this. Look how it felt. Look at the emotion that you felt watching Rogue One. Like, there's no happy ending really to this. It's just an ending. It transitioned to something else. If they could have carried that style of editing and cinematography and music into The Force Awakens, we would not have
Yep.
had something that felt cheesy right from the get-go. Because right away for me, like on the planet, meeting Lord Santeca. Who the F is Lord Santeca? Why is he important? What is this happening? Something's going on. Well, you drop a name and we never, ever, ever hear about him again. Like, his name is mentioned once, but there's nothing about him until we get to the High Republic books. 10 years later, the Santeca clan is a part of the High Republic series, but no one knew that at the time. So, like, you had no plans for this. You just dropped a thing. He gives you a thing. He gives you a USB key. He says, don't lose my USB stick. I've got some glyphs on there that I worked really hard to carve into it, but it's a USB key.
Yeah.
Let's just all be clear.
Yep.
It's a USB stick. And then First Order lands and doors open. I'm like, wait, what is happening? Like, this is a really intense scene for apparently no reason whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have one dude, one old man that they're coming to get, and they get off these ramps, and they're not expecting Poe. They're expecting an old man in a village. And they come in just blow up all of the things and maybe we'll find a dude. All of that to me just felt so forced and artificial. It really did. And I think if they could have let themselves have the energy of Rogue One, something similar to that happened first, I really wonder what The Force Awakens could have been after that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And by the way, I'm seeing in the chat here, I am checking my 3 and my 9, Rich. Looking out for those raptors. That's again, they're right in the trees. They're right behind me here. So the thing that I think about a lot, so one thing that Marcia Lucas pointed out is she said, they just wanted to get a Star Wars movie out every year. And that isn't what Star Wars is about. Yeah, nope. And she made a really good point about that. She's like, and again, this is where quality over quantity comes from. And by the way, the anticipation between the movies is kind of a part of the buildup.
Yeah.
Like, and it's funny because I remember when Episode 1 came out, and man, like, the build up to Episode 1 was, of course, insane. And then, of course, I was there at the midnight showing, like, could not wait to go and see it. And then there was this 3-year gap that you had to wait to go and see Episode 2. And I remember thinking, man, I can't get in a car accident. Like, I gotta make it, I mean, I gotta make it. And Episode 2 came out, and even when the movies were bad, there was still enough time that had passed between the movies where I still had like a high amount of anticipation. And so now the Revenge of the Sith comes out in 2005, I think it is. And so Revenge of the Sith comes out in 2005. That means that it's going to be 10 years between that and The Force Awakens. And man, like, I was super excited when The Force Awakens came out. I think one of the problems is they had this issue, which was they had too many people working on it. And this goes back to a thing that Marcia Lucas kind of points out, which is a problem that you can't solve in editing. Sometimes, but more and less not, which is you got to make decisions in your story. You can't do them all. And they had too many people working on this script. I think at one point they had 4 different screenwriters. They had different people coming in with pitches. They even had George Lucas telling them what he thought they should do for the movie. And then they finally had Lawrence Kasdan and J.J. Abrams do a final rewrite. And so they preserved a lot of the things that they liked, like a stormtrooper who stops being a stormtrooper. They preserved the idea of Jedi twins, except they decided to not make them twins, but this like weirdly connected two individuals. But in the process of doing that, they created all these little plot holes that you can force into a future movie. You can say, we're going to get to that. Like, oh, there's a resistance and there's the Republic. Okay, well, wait a second. Like, how do those two things relate to each other? And the Empire's gone, but there's the First Order, even though there's also the Republic. And there's not a lot of like dialogue as to like how one threatens the other. There's not a lot of dialogue on the nature of what the resistance means. Now, you can say that, oh, those are all in books, but it's important to keep concepts like that very simple.
And yeah, I mean, yes. And those books that people refer to, well, they're in the books. Those books came out, the book specifically in that context, came out after The Force Awakens. So Bloodline,
that's right.
Bloodline, the book that talks about why Leia is now running the Resistance and is no longer in the Republic or like a senator or the head of the, like a senator in the Republic. Bloodline covers that. But that book didn't release until after The Force Awakens. And it starts to make you think, was that just used to fill a gap because they didn't talk about it at all in the movie? Like, I don't want to believe that, but it's kind of hard not to see that. And like the idea of the First Order is discussed also in that book, like why it's called the First Order and all these things. But that was posthumous. So it makes you think, like, it starts having you question, like the books that led up to The Force Awakens did make a lot of sense, but they did not get enough fanfare in general. Outside of Star Wars circles, but more importantly, and you've kind of already said it, people who come to watch Star Wars movies are, I don't want to say it's a 50-50 split, but there's two main categories I've noticed. One is us, who are going to read books and comics and things like that. We're going to be there no matter what. People can say it's crap. It doesn't matter. We're going to go see it. That's a thing.
Yep.
Then there's people who want to be visually entertained by a film. And they're not,
that's right.
It's not that they're not book readers. They're not going to read Star Wars books. They're not going to read Star Wars comics. So all these nuances, like the Aftermath series that came out, Lost Stars that happened, Aftermath, and the 3 books that were part of that series that talked about the Battle of Jeddah. Not Jeddah. Where is she? Jakku. The Battle of Jakku.
Yeah, Jakku.
That was the end of the actual Empire. So after Return of the Jedi finishes, some period of time later, the Empire not just for everyone who's watching who doesn't know this. At the end of the Return of the Jedi, the Empire is not gone. At the end of the Return of the Jedi, just the second Death Star and the Emperor and stuff are gone. The rest of the Empire still exists. Their navy is still completely out there doing its thing, and it takes years for treaties to be put into place and armistices and things like that. And there is a final battle that happens over Jakku, where Rey is, and that's how the Star Destroyer came to be crashed on Jakku. That's fine. You don't need... There's not a requirement to have to tell this thing. Having her rappelling down this big thing, and you're like, what is this? And go, oh my gosh, she's in a Star Destroyer. Wait, what? What is that all about? That is to me, that's like, that is a thread you can tug on later, that needs to be tugged on later, because it's really interesting. And even if you hint at it, it doesn't have to be fully fleshed out. But they didn't do that. It's almost like, cool, you can get that in the books. It's like, your audience isn't going to just read all these books to get this context. If you're going to do this, you got to feed them something in these visual stories enough that they want to keep up with the story. Because if you just say, well, we've augmented that in the books, we'll just tell you there, it's like, that's not... Anyone who's watching who doesn't consume that sort of content is going to sit there and go, what is all this about? This doesn't make any sense to me. I'm very confused with what this is.
Yeah, and this is where it's like, this is the failings of like storytelling. And by the way, J.J. Abrams, usually the way that he gets around those kind of problems is, it's a mystery. It's a mystery. They're called the First Order. It's a mystery. The Knights of Ren. It's a mystery. Like, he's really big on like, and this is the kind of guy that's like, he's gonna, if he was the contractor that was working on your house, let's say he's not the contractor, he's the guy that designs the plans. He's going to do this. He's going to create all these things. Then he's going to give you the plans. And you're like, wow, this is great. Like, how do you build this? And he's like, oh, no, man, that's not my job. My job's like big ideas. I do razzle dazzle. And that's kind of like what The Force Awakens is. And that's why you can leave The Force Awakens feeling filled up, but they're all empty calories.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is a movie that I still actually like a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, I watched The Force Awakens and can still enjoy it, but I can recognize that it's empty calories. And the reason why is because it's missing at moments where the story needs to slow down. And this is what Marcia Lucas is talking about. At moments where the story needs to slow down to kind of speak to the mystery, not midi-chlorians the situation, but to speak to the mystery, is like, hey, how did you get this lightsaber, Maz Kanata? That's a story for another time. Okay. Like, these are moments where you can have lines, throwaway lines like that. You can there's a lot of things that you can do to try to like again, Rey touches the lightsaber and sees the hallway in Cloud City. Sees like the future and the past, sees all these things that is going on all at once, and that really isn't explained. But again, it's mystery. It's mystery.
That's one of those things. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. I'm done. I'm just gonna, though, I'll wrap up on saying the issue here is story, and that was Marcia Lucas's biggest issue, is that they were more interested in getting a Star Wars movie out than getting a Star Wars story out. And that is her big criticism of J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy.
I completely agree with you. I mean, the example you just gave of that scene in Maz Kanata's castle, Rey interacting with the lightsaber and what happens there, to me, I mean, I don't know editing as well as you do, but to me, that's a scene that actually could, in my opinion, could have been fixed in editing and a tune of music a little bit. Because what could have happened right there is, if she had been presented with a scenario, if they had edited this in a way where Rey is presented with, she feels called, like we hear a sound, we hear something that Rey is like, Rey, like, or whatever, like she's like, what is? They're like, where are we going? I'm gonna go take a walk. I need to go clear my head. And she finds herself walking down there, and she gets down, and then as she gets to the room, all of a sudden, and like explosions. Wait, what is going on? And she sees this thing, and she's like, oh, I gotta go, and like something blocks her way, so she turns around, finds this box, opens it, goes, okay, whatever, goes to pick it up, has a reaction, and then she turns, and Maz is standing right there. And Maz, rather than saying, like, it's a story for another time, she like says something like, that is something you need. Well, I don't know what it is. And she's like, what is it? And Maz kind of stops and looks around and goes, come back and see me and I'll tell you. Or something like that. But Rey's got to go because there's an impending, compelling event that's making her have to go. And so she either runs and drops it by accident and it falls, or she keeps it and it's on her waistband and she runs. Then that, to me, that sets up, it's like, ooh, oh, okay. She's got to come back and talk to Maz. There's something there that we want to know. But it feels more like she had to go for a reason. She didn't just go because she's like, it freaked me out. I'm scared. I'm going to run. Like, Rey, you don't see like someone who gets scared that easy. So, like, you've been living your entire life by yourself in a freaking desert fighting off bandits. Like, I don't really buy that you're just scared because you got one vision. Like, freaked out, yes. Scared and you have to abandon everything and run off into the forest. No, like, that seems out of character for you already. Like, it just, it breaks down the characters. Like, to me, if they edited that just a little differently and put events overlapping each other a little bit more than they did, I would have believed it. I would have, oh crap, what is that? And it would have been, even if they didn't pick it up, it would have been super interesting as like a side tale. Put it in a comic book, make some shorts off of it, whatever.
It's funny because Maz Kanata is one of these characters that is created. You have to create characters like this so that way you can have someone that is. It's funny because it's like these are characters that are built all the time. This is Gandalf. This is Yoda. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi. You have to have a character that's introducing your protagonist as well as like pretty much anybody, like the audience, into this is the rules of this world. Again, when Luke's from this backwater planet, so he's a farm boy, he doesn't know a lot of things. And when Luke says, "What's the Force?" When Obi-Wan's explaining that to Luke, that's there in the script because someone needs to tell us the rules. the audience. We need to learn what the Force is. So Obi-Wan's telling Luke that, so that way we can also know. And by the way, that's what a protagonist is for. It's for us to vicariously live through what's happening in the story. And this is where The Force Awakens is at its most successful, in my opinion. It's got two protagonists. Its greatest success is its biggest failure. It's got two protagonists, and co-protagonists is hard. I can only think of a handful of movies where co-protagonists exist, and even then, I can only think of one really great one where they exist at the same time. I'm sorry. The best one that I can think of, the protagonists don't exist at the same time, and that's Godfather 2. You see Vito Corleone and you see Michael Corleone, and they are on similar paths, but they're in totally separate movies that happen to just be together. Co-protagonist is like a really hard thing to do for exactly the reasons why Force Awakens ultimately fails, because if you have two protagonists, okay, and both of them are your stand-ins for the audience, and both of them are going on the same hero's journey, engage with the path, reject the path, go search, find, take, sacrifice, and then come back changed. That's a lot of work for two characters, so eventually you have to pick one. And the Force Awakens, I'm sorry, the Force Awakens ultimately decides, and it doesn't decide this well. It decides that its protagonist is Rey. And it actually lets the lightsaber choose Rey to let the audience know this is your protagonist. This is your hero. And that's what I think is so funny. And so if you work backwards from there, if the lightsaber is going to be the decider, that's when you actually can do that in Maz Kanata's basement or whatever, her fun basement, where Maz Kanata can say some objects, just we'll throw away a line. Some objects are so connected to the Force. And I think she even says that the saber chooses you, but she needed to that's all she needed to say, that this lightsaber that is a hallmark for the Jedi, it has chosen you, or it's chosen one of you. It doesn't matter. It can be both Finn and Rey, but eventually it allows the audience to know that one of them will be chosen to be our leader and champion. And in that moment, the other person has to acknowledge that. When that happens, Finn is actually unconscious. It actually takes something away from him that he can't participate in that moment with Rey. It's an acknowledgement. It's a thing that happens in a lot of movies, when you do have dueling protagonists. A major protagonist with a very high supporting protagonist is in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and the major supporting protagonist is Hermione Granger. And in the moment, and you're following both of them for quite some time, and then in the moment when Harry has to be a hero, he is, and Hermione's there to witness it. And not because, of how it breaks down or anything else. It's important that your characters can work together when a thing like that happens. And this is where the story then fails Finn, because after that, he's unconscious and in the background for the rest of the next two movies. And he does get a nice side adventure in The Last Jedi, and he does get a really nice character arc, which I actually do appreciate. But now he is definitely a separate character. He is no longer a co-protagonist. And this is also one of those things where Poe somehow becomes more of a protagonist in The Last Jedi, when really we don't need that from Poe. That needs to be Finn. So yeah, it is all three of them get to learn a lesson. But yeah, it is one of these things, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to ramble,
No, you're
but
fine,
it's one
dude.
of these things. Oh no, I feel like I'm starting to ramble a little bit on like the nature of characterization. But this is where again, Marcia Lucas really hones in on, hey, like you can't just have a character like Rey suddenly grab a lightsaber and defeat someone who has been trained as a Jedi since they were a small child before their fall to the dark side.
I know
She
it.
says that, and it's a big deal, and these all make
Yeah.
sense because there isn't that characterization. There's no choice.
Yeah. It's akin to what you just said. I'm glad you brought that up because it's akin to the sort of controversy is way too strong of a word. I'm giving it too much credit if I say this, but the sort of pseudo controversy over Luke and Ahsoka in the final season, the second season of The Mandalorian, and the pseudo controversy exists of like one's more power, like how would what is it? How is he? Luke is able to defeat these things, and something about Ahsoka. I don't remember exactly how it plays out, and people are like how was she so much better with her lightsaber and stuff, and her force powers, and more knowledgeable, and all of these things, and everyone who comes up is like, she trained for what, 19 years? Like, how old was she when she left? No, she was like 16 or whatever, like 15. I think it was 15. She trained for 15. She was born basically and given to the temple and trained for 15 years, not just as a Padawan, but as a Padawan to Anakin Skywalker. Like, Yoda trained her for years as a youngling, and then she was Anakin's Padawan for like 10, 12 years, if not whatever the time period was, like, or maybe less than that, whatever. But she was completely trained, indoctrinated, and taught all the workings of the Jedi. And Luke was given what, like a couple of years, maybe, by an old dude for a hot minute, and then a ghost, a gaslighter, and a ghost, and then Yoda for like a couple of days, and then he was like, "Peace, I'm out." And like, there's nothing there. Like it's so hard to say that. Like, I forgot my point. The reason I was bringing this up, but like, it's not the same. They're just. I really wish they would have done more of what you described. The other piece I was thinking is the dual protagonist thing. I was thinking the only places that really works, you can make it work well, is written stories, books, and things easily. Yep. You can have multiple protagonists you want, no problem, because it's a different format. You can also do it in series. So like in Netflix on the Witcher series, Geralt of Rivia, in the first series, Geralt of Rivia and Yennefer. Basically two protagonists. Yennefer's more of like an anti-hero than she is a protagonist, but whatever in the series. But it works because their stories are happening in totally different timelines. They're in different parts of the country, different timelines affecting different people, and they do crisscross twice, I think, in the first season. And I'm sure they're going to crisscross a couple more times probably in the second season. But in a series, it works because you have like whatever number of episodes they had in the series, like 8 episodes or 9 episodes. You got 9 hours to make these things work. And I know I've said it on this show before, but I really hold to more movies that are made, like The Force Awakens, just make them a damn series. Make it a series on Disney. Disney Plus wasn't around at the time, but like, make it a series. It does not. If you're having to work this hard to get something into 2.5 hours, why don't you just make a series that could be 9, 10, 13 hours if you want it to be a 13 episode season, and you have all the time in the world to bring in nuance, work in side tales, all these things. Like, just Doctor Who it. Like, you got all the time in the world to work through this stuff. Literally, it's time. But they try to shove it all in because you got to have a blockbuster movie. It's like, you don't, though. Like, not these days. You don't. As COVID's shown us, you don't need to have big blockbuster films to tell great stories and to maintain an audience that is dedicated and wants to stick with you the whole time. You just don't.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that that's the advantage now of having, like, the Disney Pluses of the world, the Amazon videos and everything that they have now. It's funny though, I think this always just keeps coming down to choice, and that's the heart of when movie. And it's funny, of course, an editor would realize that, because an editor is the surgeon of film. I don't know it's funny. I was talking to friends of mine, old friends of mine, way back when I used to work in, I used to make a lot of movies. Jeff, I don't know if we've ever even talked about this, but when I was in high school, I fell in with a group of guys and we had our own production company, and we, some of my friends went off and got into the industry, and several of them went to UCLA. Several of them went to more and more places.
Sorry, I apologize. I know there's a great end to the story. I'm sorry, but only you would start a story off with, well, I fell in with a group of guys in college, and that turned into a production company. Anybody else who said the phrase, I fell in with a group of X, would turn into a Mad Max like post-apocalyptic world for you.
Exactly.
It went into an editing group and we did production casting. like it's just really happy.
And then we started this massive meth production ring. I got out of it.
I mean, you got to fund your production company somehow.
Exactly.
I mean, who needs teeth to do production?
Yeah, I mean, we're not on camera. But what's funny is that, of course, all of my friends who did ultimately go into the industry and do work in the industry, some of them are screenwriters, some of them got into editing, and that's because that's the one thing that you can get a degree in. But in the editing room, you have to make choices. And sometimes they're good choices and sometimes they're bad choices, but you get forced to say, what is this going to be? And so you can get great movies that are in the editing room, like The Conversation or Godfather, like I was talking about, or you can see terrible movies that happened in the editing room, like the original Suicide Squad movie is a movie that was already problematic, but then butchered in the editing. You can see problems in the Justice League movies.
Oh my God.
Like all of these things are editing related. So of course a great editor would recognize that it's choices that make a movie. And so when you were talking about co-protagonists or even protagonists generally, story matters, and that those stories are defined by our choices. And so that's one of the things that happened to the sequels, where it's like you can have like multiple protagonists if you then make choices, or you can build to multiple protagonists. The Lord of the Rings movies did that. Originally, Fellowship of the Ring, when it was originally shot, it had co-protagonists, Aragorn and Frodo, and then they realized it's Frodo's movie, and so they edited out all of the Aragorn stuff, and then they said, we're going to restore that when we get to the Two Towers, and it'll be co-protagonists moving forward. There'll be an Aragorn storyline, there'll be a Path of the Ring and a Path of the King. That's what they used to call it. And you could have done that in those sequel movies. You could have made you could have started with Rey and then expanded the world outward from there. Rey runs into Finn runs into Poe, and then so forth from there. And that's how they did it even in Star Wars. You start out with Princess Leia, but then you follow Luke as you go through it. The prequels had this exact same problem. They couldn't figure out in Phantom Menace who George needed to make a choice, and he just couldn't. Who's the main character? It's Obi-Wan. No, now it's this nameless Jedi. Now it's the Queen. Now it's back to the nameless Jedi. Now it's this little boy.
Those movies were more of
you gotta make a
those movies
you
were
gotta
more
make
like,
a choice.
Phantom Menace was more like a series of events that were happening that we just happened to catch. Like, hey, somebody opened a. You know what? It actually makes me think of. What If, the series What If that we're watching, like in Marvel. It makes me feel like the watcher randomly just goes, cool. Kind of walks up to the glass, now that we've seen where he lives, walks up to that little bit of crystal and goes, kind of wipes the smoke off the mirror for a minute and goes, oh, what's happening here? Bunch of random things happen. Cool. I'm going to move on to the next area. That's what the Phantom, now that I think about it, that's what it felt like. Like, it's just somebody randomly walked into a story that was already happening, and it's just not even a story, like a series of things that are happening to some people in one part of a galaxy. Because if you backed up a little bit, there's 100 other things happening to all kinds of people in the rest of the galaxy, because it doesn't follow any one person. It's just some stuff happened to some people, and it was good and bad, depending on how you look at it.
If it was intentional, the Phantom Menace could be a masterpiece. It's like French New Wave science fiction. It's like, we're following this guy now. Oh, look, the camera got lost. Now it's over here.
Yeah,
These are the people that we care about now. If it was intentional, oh my gosh, like Phantom Menace could be
it
great,
could
and
have
that's
been.
really, the difference, honestly,
Yeah,
between genius and terrible is that sometimes things that are great, it's because I chose it to be that way.
yeah. Have you read the Master and Apprentice book? It
No, I haven't.
About Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. So it's about.
Oh, I did. I read the first one. I read the very first one where it's about Obi-Wan's a little bit of a rebel. He's kind of rambunctious. He's really hard to get a handle on. Him and Qui-Gon don't get along.
And they go do
That
one.
was,
And
yeah.
Qui-Gon was just offered to be on the Jedi Council, and he's mulling it
Yep.
over. They
Yep.
go on
Yep.
they
Yep.
go on an adventure together, and it's a
Yep.
fantastic story. If they had
Mhm.
done that as the Phantom Menace, essentially, or not that story, but if they had made the Phantom Menace the relationship between a master and a Padawan, because we've never seen it. We've never seen it in the movies before. Like Obi-Wan and Luke, not master and Padawan. Like this was just a kid who was taught how to be kind of a Jedi and left to his own devices with some random Force ghosts every now and again saying, "Do this, maybe do that, maybe don't do this. We're not going to tell you things."
Yep.
And if the
Yep.
Phantom Menace had been more, now that I think about this, more like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, their relationship, establish what a master and an apprentice are supposed to look like in the Jedi Order in these troubled times, and see how that have all the other things that are happening, but all to support that story. That would have been an interesting story. Like then the scene at the end with Obi-Wan fighting Maul would have been even more emotional. Like this thing that we just established, and we just realized, like, wow, that's what this is supposed to be. And then, oh my God, he's what? And then we see Obi-Wan. It would make Obi-Wan, not only would Obi-Wan seem like a more intense character, but then when he finally he gets together with Anakin at the end of the movie, it would have made like, ooh, I wonder how this is gonna go. It would have
Right
made you
there.
think about that even more, because right now you look at it and like, oh, he's got his Padawan braid. They look at each other and they're like, look, we have the same haircut, but you got a Padawan braid. Hey, it would have looked more like a dour, like a happy look on Anakin's face because he's like cool, and a much more dour look on Obi-Wan's face as he is, or like maybe bags under his eyes or something to indicate that like he's going through some shit. This is not a happy time for him, and he's looking at this kid, and you could tell that like this is not going to be a fun relationship between the two of them. And it wasn't. Like we read in other things, it was not a good relationship between the two of them because Obi-Wan didn't want to train him. He didn't want to do it. It says in these books he never wanted to train Anakin.
And what's really crazy is that then betrays the whole like your father was a great pilot and a cunning warrior and a good friend. That moment is either the biggest lie or it's not. I mean, Obi-Wan's constantly gaslighting Luke. I mean, maybe he does hate him. He's training his son to kill him. I mean, again, like that's some pretty like next level revenge planning. Is like, I'm so crazy, I'm gonna steal your kid. That's some Shakespeare stuff. That's Titus, I'm gonna steal your kid, train him to go and kill you, and tell him
In 20
it's
or
to
something
save the
years.
universe.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I am playing a long con here. Like, taking him away.
Dude.
We're going to let this play out for the next couple of decades. And then he's going to pop up and go.
Yeah.
And then we go, ha! I got you.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, you put that story in any other context, Obi-Wan is the villain of the story.
100%.
But on a serious note here, like, and I think again, this is where I think the criticism from Marcia Lucas is valid.
Yeah.
I actually disagree with her criticism because she didn't like The Last Jedi. And that's because I can see why she's very protective of these characters. I do agree with, she didn't like that Han Solo was killed. By the way, you brought up the fact that, Harrison Ford was like, yeah, I'll do your movie, but I want to die. He's been saying that since Jedi. He's been like, I don't want to be a part of these movies anymore. But the last time I checked, Harrison Ford's latter half of his career is not exactly going as he planned. And so that's a little bit of like, hey, you know what? You got to force Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford came back for Rise of Skywalker, to his credit. You can actually have those moments where you can go back to Harrison Ford and say, hey, like, we don't want to kill you. But I like the idea of the old giving way to the new. And so I was okay with Han Solo dying. I was okay with Luke dying. I thought that was actually really touching and poignant because his story had meaning. It existed more than just he's a Yoda stand-in to teach Rey how to be a Jedi. I like that he is a complicated figure. So I don't agree with all of her criticism, but I do agree with the criticism that J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy and Disney overall saw a property that they could monetize. You know, there's a scene in the Cars movies or something where some guy hears music being made, and they go over to the Cars, and this is a Disney movie, and they say, "What's that sound?" And the guy says, "That sound, that's angels printing money." And that's what I think Disney thought. Like, oh wow, this is just going to make us a
we
ton
got
of
Star
money.
Wars. We are set. I really feel like, and I know this is highly contested, but I really feel like they should have at least consulted somebody like Feige or something. I'm not saying Feige is like an amazing editor or whatever, or producer, but very clearly look at the MCU. Like, the story weave of the MCU and the series and the cartoons and all these things is working really, really well for the MCU. I feel like if they had consulted or like just had some additional conversations with people like that who are clearly weaving a long game and doing it very well, they probably would have had better success with these movies. And I am with you that her much of her criticism is very apt. Like, it's like, this is, you are not wrong. Some of it I disagree with, or I disagree with it in more nuanced, or like I agree, but like in some more than nuance, not just blanket. I don't. One thing I don't like about the way the article was written is that it, whether intentionally or not, it feeds into this running thing of like Kathleen Kennedy is screwing all these things over. It's like, okay, calm down. Like, she's one person, and she's not walking into a writing room saying, "Cool, I'm taking over and rewriting your entire movie." I'm pretty sure Kathleen Kennedy is not a screenwriter, so she's not physically. she's influencing things, but that's, you and I have been working for companies long enough that even in creative companies, your senior execs are not literally taking on the responsibility of actually doing the content creation. They may influence it in a heavy way or saying, "You're not doing this particular thing," but they're not going to walk in and like physically change the medium. That's not what their job is. And I would imagine mostly they don't do that. So I'm sure she is not. She has a hand in it because it's her fucking job. Sorry, apologize. Like, that's her job. But, and agree with it or not, but I like the shade that she's thrown to me is like, most of it is completely unfair or very unfair because she's made decisions and some of them worked and some of them didn't. That's how this stuff goes. But the criticism, the writing and the editing criticisms that Marcia put out, I think are totally valid and need to be stripped of emotion and be taken very seriously for these future movies that will be coming out, or series, preferably more series or standalone movies, because we need that. We really do need a really strong focus on the storytelling, because we can't have it just be great storytelling in books. That's amazing, but it cannot just be there.
No, because Star Wars works best, I think, when it's a visual medium. And I think that's why I like the comic books so much. But the thing that I think about a lot is, I always like to play the what if game myself. And I like to look back on things and think, oh man, you guys missed an opportunity. And if there's one thing they could have learned from Feige, is having a unified movie universe. And if they wanted to have these movies come out as often as they did, there's this thing that's a great concept in movies, which is the lie your character believes in. And often that's a villain, that's a protagonist or their antagonist. The lie your character believes. And often there is a moment where the audience knows the truth before the person does. And it's actually a really like cool thing, because you get to be with that character when it comes to pass. And I remember when Force Awakens came out, and the big mystery coming out of Force Awakens was, who's Rey's parents? And everyone's like, it's Luke's daughter, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi's granddaughter, all these things, right? She's a Palpatine. Then Rogue One comes out, and the timing's right, the characterization's right, the accents are right. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be our opportunity to learn about Rey's parents. We're going to learn Rey's parents and the story of how she's abandoned before Rey does. And then these interstitial movies that we're getting, whether it's originally at the time they had 3, there was going to be Rogue One, the Solo story, and then the last one was going to be Boba Fett. And I thought, oh, these interstitial movies are going to be these chapters that give us background as we go into the next film. And they didn't do that. They made them as true standalones. And I thought, yeah, I get you. I get why you're trying to do that as a standalone. You can still make a standalone story that intersects with these other stories. And that's where I feel like that was a missed opportunity, because if you're building a universe like this, build it. Build that universe. Show us that world.
Yep. World creation is like such a core tenet in storytelling. I mean, look at Captain Marvel as an example. Like, of course, she's getting another movie, but how many years has it been since that movie came out? And how long is it going to be before the next movie? I think it's being filmed next year sometime. It's been many years. Yeah, it's been a long time. And that's good, because her character was brought into other films and into other stories. That just sets the stage. You don't need to just have another movie just for the fun. And it works. Like, bringing these characters in, like, they cross over a line, do some action, then they move on with their own life and go back to what they were doing. It helps. It makes you feel like this is all part of one big thing that is being woven together. Whereas, to your point, these feel like they're very disconnected. It disconnected in the sense that we are learning more background about the galaxy far, far away, but not in a way that interlocks them all together. It's like, cool, we're going to tell you points in time of all these things that are happening. Great. But how do they work together? Oh, they don't. We're just telling you more information about the galaxy. It's like, well, that's cool. Yeah, but to a point. Again, after a certain point, it's like, I don't want it to just be fun and exciting. I want it to actually make some sense. And right now it doesn't. Some of this stuff doesn't make sense. Like, why? But why? Like, but if you're going to do that, though, why didn't you just write in some connectivity to this other thing?
And again, it's like, if a really good example is fan service, and Rogue One is the pullback to see that R2 and C-3PO are there. That's the fan service in Rogue One, which also always made me think, like, why are they there? Why are they there? Like, shouldn't they be somewhere else? Like, I don't know. I remember thinking that's a strange pullback, but whatever. I love R2. He's my favorite character. I'm glad to see him. The other thing that I remember thinking about in that moment was, oh, you guys can do more than fan service. You guys could really tie us back to the rest of the saga. And you know who does that? The Mandalorian. Because they end the season 2 with Luke. And that's a narrative thread that has a payoff, and it connects you to the larger universe without diminishing the characters that we're following. Like, I still care a lot about the Mandalorian, still care a lot about all of the people that he was with in that season. I care about the journey that Din Djarin is on. This is one of those things where it's like, you can have those connection points. You can do more than fan service. And so, yeah, I applaud Marcia Lucas. I do think that it was crazy that after she burned Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams, she also said, call me, as if to say, I'm available for work. Because that's not how it works in the industry. I know I was on the peripheral. Again, there was a whole meth story with that. But in all seriousness, I loved that article. I don't know why she came out now and said all those crazy things, but I will say this: she's an amazing editor. Totally deserved that Oscar. And if you want to see a really great example of amazing editing, watch Star Wars. It's great. If you want to see an example of terrible editing, watch a 2017 movie called The Snowman with Michael Fassbender. I love every single person that's in that movie. That's a great example of a movie that is, it's got some of the smartest, brilliant people working in that movie. Great directors, great everything. And that movie's a disaster. And part of it is in the editing. A lot of it's in the story, but it's even made more crazy by the editing of that movie. The shots are all wrong. The shots are all edited wrong. There's a lot of overdubbing. There's ADR, tons of ADR. So if you want to see a great editing, Marcia Lucas' Star Wars, and if you want to see terrible editing, it's The Snowman, the 2017 movie. Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
There we go. I think that is our ending right there. That is like a good bomb drop for the night for sure. Awesome, dude. Well, this has been a good show. I love that I love that you found that article, or that you came across it. We decided to talk about it tonight because I think.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It gets back to it really does get back to the nuance that we've gone through so many times on. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure something is downloaded and works here in a sec. The nuance we've gone through, what we do in the show is storytelling. It's all about telling good stories I shouldn't even say that. Telling engaging stories that are meaningful and thoughtful for people who are watching them. That's what's important. Yes. People connect with them, and there's an opportunity for everybody to connect with a story in their own way for their own reasons. It doesn't just have to be because there's no objective good story. It's all subjective.
That's right.
So can it be subjective in a way that somebody can attach to it in their own way and enjoy it? And to your point, poor editing can really foobar that. Can really take that story and go, hey, you thought this was really cool? No. Like, oh, lobbing a ball up. Nope. Lobbing a ball up. Nope. Like, I feel like that TikTok meme where it's like, nope, nope, nope.
Yep,
like that's what it feels like. It's exactly what it feels like.
Oh yeah. No. I loved it. I'm glad that we got to talk about this.
Yep, absolutely. All right, dude. Well, listen, we're a little bit over. Thank you everyone for being here. Rich, thank you so much for being here, buddy.
Hey, thank you, Rich.
There was no Star Trek tonight. Sorry, dude. We let you down. But we'll come back.
Really edited, well-edited Star Trek movie is Wrath of Khan, Star Trek 2. It is the best of all of them.
There you go.
Amazingly edited. Yes. Yeah, that's the best best edited movie.
I'm sorry, Rich. I apologize. I never said...
Got it in!
I never said this was safe for work. But I will watch the Potty Mouth next time, I promise. All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.